Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Acclime Vietnam's office and welcome to our market entry hybrid event in partnership with UOB Vietnam and BW Industrial. First of all, we've received quite a lot of attendees and interest for this webinar. It was somewhat unexpected considering the latest situation, looking at tariffs and uncertainty in the market. But we have pretty much around 200 attendees offline and online that are joining this webinar. So thank you for your interest and thank you for joining us this morning for the next 1 hour and a bit to understand what are the practicalities and what are the important matters for foreign investors when entering in Vietnam, what are some of the strategies, do's and don'ts, and as well to cover some of the latest tariff topics that everyone is interested in. Before we start with the presentations, I would like to ask everyone that is online attending the webinar to put down any of your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll go through those in the panel discussion. Everyone that is here in our office, please write down your questions, and we'll go through all of those or as many as we can in the panel session. The agenda for today will start with a presentation on my side that will cover tariffs and market entry strategies. And after that, the three panelists on my left here will go through some of the specifics related to the setup and the licensing part, the industrial location part, and as well the financing and general macro opportunity in Vietnam. The goal for us with this special event is to give you a bit more certainty in these uncertain times, and as well to offer you some practical advice from industry leaders here to enable you to understand the Vietnamese opportunity and how to access it. So without further ado, let's go through the agenda. A few things about Acclime and myself. My name is Vlad Savin. I'll be your host today. I'm a partner of Acclime in Vietnam. We look after foreign investors that are interested in accessing Vietnamese market. We protect them while they operate, and we help them at the setup stage or the expansion stage with various strategies and advisory projects. We have offices all around Asia in 50 plus jurisdictions, and we do work with quite a lot of investors that come in from the US, come in from China, come in from region, from Europe, and we help them navigate the complexities of international expansion. As I said, the first topic, and going through fast and on the point with the elephant in the room, the tariffs. It's been the last 2 weeks, I think, a complete unknown with the latest news that we're receiving every day through notifications and news channels, morning and evening, completely unexpected as well. Let's try to give a bit of a status update on where we are and some of the recommendation and potential expectations that we may have here. First, let's go through this slide here, which represents 2024 kind of investment macro opportunity in Vietnam. I will highlight here the two charts on the right side where you see US exports from the Vietnamese economy, around 136 billion USD. Chinese imports into Vietnam, just a bit over 140. So this kind of is a very, very symbolic example of where Vietnam sits at this stage now in this moment between US and China, and as well globally supporting the entire supply chains. As you see, it's manufacturing. Main products that are exported in Vietnam, you see apparel, you see computers, electronic, smartphones. Specifically, these type of products and product lines will be impacted by tariffs, obviously. So what's the current update, what we have now? Well, we started with a 46% tariff on Vietnam, one of the highest globally after China. It's been a surprise, and the investor community is in the process of understanding and analyzing what's next after that. Also, we have the 90-day break for this tariff with the 10% baseline news, and that's been as well a surprise. Nobody expected that, but now we're here. We have it. So this gives a well-needed break for investors to strategize what they're going to do next, and as well for the Vietnamese authorities to start the advocacy channels and the negotiation channels, which has already begun. Just a couple of days ago, we had another news, tariff exemptions on smartphones, computers, and other electronics. As you can see on the right side there, those are key products exported from Vietnam to the US. Certain statistics put that on a 2 out of 3 ratio of all exports to the US are related to electronics and electronic products, smartphones. So the fact that there are exemptions in these areas, it's a significant good news, not just for these 90 days, but generally in that sense that the US authorities identify these products as key needs for the US consumers. We also had Chinese officials visiting Vietnam, I believe yesterday, 2 days ago, and that's again significant news that shows the importance of the Vietnamese economy in the global context, sitting somewhere between US, China, Europe, and the region as well. So it's extremely interesting times that we have here. What's important now is obviously diplomacy of the Vietnamese authorities. For the last 20 years, you've heard probably of bamboo diplomacy. Vietnam is indeed famous in the way they navigate international markets, befriending from an economic perspective, significant jurisdictions across the globe. The expectation and what's needed now is as well for Vietnam to be able to navigate adopting these kind of policies, the current situation, much more challenging. But from what we see with investors, there is a very strong confidence that Vietnamese authorities will be able to not just negotiate valid opportunity in the Vietnamese context, but as well expand their diplomacy goals. Key recommendations, and this is as well part of what European Chamber community shared just a few days ago on one of their webinars and based on their surveys. What would investors do in this scenario? The reality is that a lot of them are sitting, waiting, and trying to understand what's going to happen next. So it's an uncertainty scenario where not much can be done. But some of the things that investors are doing already is to look at their supply chain, look at their potentially diversifying their export markets, identify what they're doing on top of all the regulations and all the news that are coming out from the authorities in the US and in Vietnam, and as well work with trade bodies, work with authorities, with chambers of commerce, and push the advocacy in the interest of their businesses and their companies. What will we expect in the next period, in the next few days or in the next few months? Certainly trade disruptions. Those will continue, even though the negotiations will kind of settle, and even though a 90-day timeframe may end up being positive for Vietnam, it's still going to be uncertainty. There's still going to be trade disruptions. So that's an expectation from the investors that they need to consider when they're putting out their plans. Also, export volumes in these 90 days are expected to grow because US buyers, they see this as an opportunity to stock up with the reduced tariffs on the 10%, at least in the time being before there is any news about what's going to happen next with the tariffs, because in the end, nobody really knows. Diversified strategies, and again, Vietnamese bamboo diplomacy and openness for FDI is significant. Now, going through and finishing with the tariff component that brings a lot of uncertainty, we'll try in the next few minutes, I'll try in the next few minutes to identify what are some of the certain elements that reflect Vietnam's position, speaking on trade investments. Starting with trade, for example, since 1980s and up to now, free trade agreements, it's not just the sheer number of the trade agreements that Vietnam has, it's essentially the growth in the exports and the value that these trade agreements generate. So you can see, for example, Australian trade agreements after it was signed, 20% increase. Japan, South Korea, 8%. EVFTA with European Union, 15%. Vietnam is that perfect example globally that shows that where trade is engaged, exports will grow, will develop, and more value will be created. Vietnam is also a significant hub as part of a supply chain strategy for international investors. Many reasons for that, and one of those reasons is the workforce, availability of the workforce. Young, skilled population, looking at the wages and how competitive they are. You can see on the slide here, Vietnam is one of the most competitive in the markets. Half minimum wage compared with China and many other jurisdictions regionally in Asia and Southeast Asia. Obviously, the proximity is extremely important as well in this context. Taxation-wise as well, we look at 20% tax rate for Vietnam, looking at other jurisdictions as well, one of the lowest. Tax incentives, geographic, based on geography, based on specific sectors, based on specific industries. The Vietnamese authorities are promoting FDI heavily. They will continue doing that, and they will put out these strategies to make sure that Vietnam continues to be a significant supply chain hub. What are some of the trends that we're expecting in the next few years? Definitely digital economy growth. By 2030, it's projected to reach 30% of GDP. Real estate recovery, investments within the semiconductors and high-tech industries, and a lot of activity from an M&A perspective for international investors, specifically within the healthcare, technology, retail. For strategies, going through now and through the next topics that my co-panelists will cover. When you're looking at market entry strategies, you're essentially, as a foreign investor, having the option of setting up an entity, setting up a clear structure in country, or working with distributors, working with online, for example, commerce brands that already exist here, and go down the avenue of a light market entry model. In any scenarios, there's opportunities for both of these strategies, and we can talk more in the next few minutes and slides with the other panelists of how these can play out for international investors. From a market entry perspective, with setting up an entity, we have here 3 examples of how an entity structure is undertaken by foreign investors that want to do a direct investment in Vietnam. The most common scenarios are a limited liability company, foreign enterprise, and a rep office. Rep office has certain limitations. In reality, an enterprise, an LLC is what investors are commonly choosing when entering the Vietnamese market. I prepared a couple of slides on funds flow and misconceptions and kind of important things to do's and don'ts for foreign investors. I'll skip through those quickly because my colleague Lucy, that is in charge of market entry and licensing, will cover quite a few of those. So in the interest of time, I'll let the other panelists go through with their presentation. Before I do that, I'll invite whoever is online and offline to check out our resource hub online. We have a lot of industry reports. We have a lot of podcasts, videos, guides that are all relevant for international investors to understand the Vietnamese markets, Vietnamese business environment, and how to navigate these effectively. Thank you for your attention for these last 10 minutes. Hopefully I wasn't over time on the schedule. I don't know who's keeping track on the timing. But thank you again for your attention, and I'll hand over to my next panelist, Mr. Gene from VW. Thank you.
That's great, right?
On the right spot. So, morning, everyone. My name is Gene. I'm from VW Industry. I'm the Chief Investment Officer. So I think basically our business is, later on, I'll give you a deeper dive into our business model. But in short, we are the for lease, for rent, industrial facilities, infrastructure developer. And now we're having like more than 4.5 million square meter of floor plate on the market. And I think like the majority of our clients are from either FDI manufacturings or like big 3PLs, because we build warehouse for these as well, and also I think in retails or all these like manufacturing driven logistics. So here I would like to share with you the in our experiences and how did we facilitate our clients to realize a really efficient and fast market entry into Vietnam. And as I mentioned, we are the for lease developer, which means we're only on a leasing business model. So it's quite simple because, well, most of the time people get confused, us with the industrial park developer. Because if it's an industrial park, that means they are in the business of relocation and acquiring the raw land or agricultural land and convert it into, with an elongated process to convert it into industrial. And then traditionally, for some manufacturers or FDIs, they come to Vietnam, they tend to acquire a piece of land and build their facility for operation. Back in the days, we've seen many, mostly traditional or fundamental manufacturers in the South, because me, myself, for benefit, I'm from Taiwan, right? So like probably 20, 30 years ago, there were a lot of these, shoemakers, textile makers. They came here, really entrepreneurial, and they built factories, they bought the land. After couple years, the land become a good speculation, right? So I think, but this model is not really working or financially efficient anymore, because as you can imagine, the land price, thanks for all these, previous, development and establishment, right, of the early FDIs. I think the land price can surge drastically, and the construction costs are different. And if you're not institutional, if you don't have a really professional project management team on the ground, it's really hard for you to build such a rather, like a mid-small scale facility with a very cost efficient tendering package, right? So we're talking about if you try to come into Vietnam, find a piece of land to develop your own facility, at least like cost wise, by our calculation, you spend at least like $500-600 per square meter easily. Land cost plus the construction cost, not even mention all these, like the interest and the time you spend on that. And the time frame wise, well, I think like from the day you engage into the land acquisition to the day you really open the door for actual operation, well, at least I think 36 months will not be exaggerated, right? So I think like more and more people, especially after, if I may, that 2018, this round of trade war, the new phase of supply chain relocation, more people and more suppliers, especially SME suppliers, they are under facing an extremely demanding time frame to relocate their production here. So who I'm mentioning to are not the queen bees, such as Foxconn, Wistron, Luxshare, these big guys, right? They are in the capacity to mobilize multi-billion dollars to Vietnam, and they can get a good deal, right? But they're not in real estate development business. So they don't usually do this for their vendors. But their vendors, if they want to maintain their orders, they have to follow them. And usually the time frame is crazy. Like for example, on an anonymous basis, I learned one of the largest, laptop supply chain in the world. I think their relocation demand is probably within like 8 to 12 months. And how could an SME vendor to move here and to build their facility within such a short period of amount of time? So that's what I'm saying, because of the demand, because of the efficiency and the cost. So more and more people pivot their strategy to choose leasing facility, and not saying totally going asset light, because some of the people they still consider to develop their own facility for long-term business, while others they're still in total asset light. So I think like some people they lease facility from us, and at the same time they're looking for proper locations to build their stuff. So these are the very common Okay. So speaking of this, and I would like to share a little bit more view with you about the time frame we are, saving for our clients. Because what I just mentioned, if you want to develop at least like 36 months, right? So most of the time from our tenants, usually the process is they come here we'll facilitate them like for a site visit and location to pick a right location because we know the market really well. Later on, I can share a little bit more with you about our presence in Vietnam. So we will give them our suggestion and they probably have their own preference. And once they can confirm, they will usually get involved to sign an IPA, which is more like a soft commitment and MOU with us. And then, and which is included in our service, we will start using this IPA to run the IRC and ERC, which are the most important license you need in Vietnam to start a business. Because before IRC and ERC, you will not have a legal personality in Vietnam. You don't have an onshore entity. Without that onshore entity, you can engage a real, actual lease with us. And without that official lease, you cannot start our operation and you cannot occupy the space for sure. So usually this process takes, around 3 months at most. And after that, when you have your local presence, you have your local entity, you can start a whole, a machine import and auto operation process. So usually, I think from the day you sign IPA to the commencement of your operation takes around 6 to 8 months. Yeah. So you can see the significant time saving from leasing, right? And here, and we're also, offering all our one-stop shop service because not just, helping you to get a license, as I said, those are included in our service, but also because of our resource and, our sales team, our sales force is around 40 people nationwide, and we have a big team in Hanoi as well. We're headquartered in Ho Chi Minh. So we'll help you from day one, from site selection, and also to help you to navigate you through all these taxation, agency, firefighting, all the hardware installations. I mean, these are not, included in the service, but we have the whole team to guide you through and connect you to the right authority for that. And after that, even after your operation, because of our scale, so we have all these BW community in full of our suppliers, and it's a very, very scalable supply chain community. A group of all these, probably tier 2, tier 3 SMEs, global suppliers, crossing all the mostly, I would say 80% of the existing manufacturing business in Vietnam. And at this moment, a value-added product for electronic manufacturing at this moment, but we also have decent exposure to the traditional shoemaking, furniture making in the South. So I think that's the benefit to work with BW and let us help the FDIs to build their presence in Vietnam. Okay, so a little more background of us, BW Industrial. So we're rather a new company, but we have a very, very strong background because BW were sponsored by one of the largest U.S. private equity group, Warburg Pincus, and also I think it's the Binh Nguyen. It's one of the largest industrial SOE in Vietnam called Becamex. So we started out in 2018. Right now we have around more than 1,000 hectares of industrial land. As I mentioned, again, those industrial land are ready to be developed, not saying we still need a relocation or compensation. And this strategy gives us a better visibility and estimation in terms of the time frame because deliverability is a key, right? Not just to us, but to our tenants and to our clients, because they need to know, they need to confirm time frame when they can move in, when they can start their operation, right? So we have around, in terms of GFA, we have around 4.5 million, about 3 million, 3.2 million is under operation, lease out already, and another 1.3 million square meters are under construction and which will be delivered in the next 12 months. And the coverage is national. So, So basically we have 3 key products. One is the ready-built factories, and the other is ready-built warehouses. We call them RBF and RBW. So because, in Vietnam, most of these most of these facilities, they are, I think, you cannot really, like change the uses because factories are manufacturing and warehouses are for logistics. So if no matter you're in which part of a supply chain, I think we're in a position to help. And also if you are in, you have some, specific demand, we can help you to tailor made through our BTS boot-to-suit service for some, like a special spec. And we are also targeting, I think the spec-wise, we are very, very, universal. Basically, we're providing universality to our clients because targeting on the mass majority of the manufacturing and industrial users. So the specs are, the floor loading, if we're talking, the floor loading, the factories are around like 2.5 tons, warehouse are 3 tons per square meter, and we have a 9-meter ceiling clearance of the spaces. So these are universal standardized, but if they have any specific needs, we can, of course, to help them to enhance. Okay. And presence-wise, you can see this is on the left-hand side, this is North Vietnam. On the right-hand side, this is Southern Vietnam. So we start out in Binh Duong. So you see we have rather, stronger and a larger portfolio inventories in the south, right? Around Ho Chi Minh City, from Ho Chi Minh City, Long An, Dong Nai, Binh Duong, and all these major industrial cluster and the powerhouses. And in the north, I think we're occupying all these strategic industrial strongholds, especially for the global electronic manufacturing business in the clusters, right? So all the way from Haiphong all the way to the east, to the west, sorry. Yeah, along the National Road number 5, and which being considered as the high-tech corridor of Vietnam. So to, like Bac Ninh for short, Hai Dung, Hưng Yên, and also we are engaging into the mid-north, the province of Nghệ An, where Foxconn and Luxshare are there. Okay, so I think last but not least, just, like to show you a little bit more about our position. So industrial platform in Vietnam, but not just the hardware and infrastructure, hard asset perspective. We're also highly aligned with the government policy and highly aligned with our clients' interests. So we are a connector and also the catalyst to help the government to, to lure and to facilitate more FDIs to land in Vietnam. And again, because of our scale, I think we have a better, better, a perspective into all these, incoming industries, and we know the trend. And we're in the best position, given our scale, our team, our expertise on the ground to help them efficiently to land and to start their operation here. So you can see, like at this moment, I think the electronics industry probably comprise the largest investment pool among our clients. So till for now, all these, investment accounts for like almost 400 million already. Yeah. And the rest of those are, consumer goods, power tools and furniture makings. Okay, so last but not least, I'll give you a very quick case study, which is our facility in Nhân Trạch, the Dong Nai province, which is on the east of Ho Chi Minh City. So here we have multiple projects around like a total around like 400,000 square meters, so 300-ish there. So these are very advanced and high quality, ready-built factories, double stories. So we accommodate the largest OEM TV manufacturing cluster in this area. And after this, basically all the TV manufacturers or related peripheral makers are coming in. They ask for facility or spaces in this area. So basically we help them to build a whole supply chain cluster. And also we help all these tenants start their operation in extremely efficient time frame. And I think most importantly, given their, their product, their production, so I think, of course, the local authority is very welcoming, but also given our relationship to them, I think we're the good connectors. We're facilitating them and explain and help navigate them through to the audit, regulatory process and get their operation started in a very short time frame. So you see here, like they got 10 days, 18 days, but these are specific, right? It's a very, the lesson, basically they got an IRC investment investment certificate lasts in 20 days. Right? And so I think this is a very good case study. And most of it is this place is already fully occupied. And most of these incoming manufacturers, they're still chasing for, like a property and a location like this. Yeah. So I think there are many different, also some competitor good, I would say like healthy competitions on the market. We're doing the same thing, but I think the goals are the same. So we're trying to, complete the whole supply chain to make the whole the supply chain more efficient, and try to help more FDI come into Vietnam and to help the society and to build a more resilient economy, especially at this very moment of time. Yeah. So thank you very much. And I think if you have any queries, please feel free to contact our leasing team, and we're always in a position to help, and we can always, given our nationwide presence and our ever expanding portfolio. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I have 8 minutes to share with you about the establishing an entity in Vietnam. My name is Thảo, and I'm support foreign investor with the business structure and design a market entry strategy for doing business in Vietnam. Okay, so as Vlad and Jean has shared about the overview of the business investment outlook in Vietnam, and also regarding some incorporation process in the industrial part, I would like to focus on the overview of the incorporation process in Vietnam, which is when the foreign investor, when they finalize the market entry strategy, and now it's time to implement that strategy. So there are two approaches for doing the investment in Vietnam, including direct and indirect approach. So you can see here is the these two is for the pre-licensing. So for the pre-licensing, this step 1 and step 2 is for indirect approach, which is for investor, they may acquire a portion of shares of the or acquire existing company in Vietnam. So they have to do the some due diligence of the target company, including legal due diligence, finance DD, or operational DD. And after that, they will execute the deal and do some license updates to update their name on the company license. And also after the deal execution, they will proceed with the post-transaction support, including opening a capital account to inject the capital amount to the capital account. And regarding the direct approach, you can see here that is the common strategy of the foreign investor. They want to set up their business in Vietnam, which is setting up a foreign entity in Vietnam. So there are establishment and post-licensing support. With establishment of new Vietnamese entity, foreign investor has to be well prepared of the legal document in the home country, for example, incorporation certificate, business profile, article of association or charter, and then have it notarized and legalized and translated into Vietnamese for submission to the licensing authority to get the license out. And then they will, after the post setup, the company has to follow the some post setup compliance. For example, open the direct investment capital account, do the initial tax registration, and other ongoing compliance. Okay. So focus on the FDI, which is the foreign direct investment company in Vietnam. There are, sorry. So there are 3 stages including IRC, ERC, and the post setup. So there are some requirements that I would like to emphasize for foreign investor who wants to set up a company in Vietnam. Firstly, regarding the documents in their home country, because they have to well aware of what document that the licensing authority in Vietnam requires. Because those documents to be notarized, legalized in their home country may so well prepared that document will avoid the delay in commencement of their business in Vietnam. The other keynote is the requirement for a resident legal representative in Vietnam, regardless of their nationality, either Vietnamese or foreigner, but they at least one resident legal rep in Vietnam as required by law. And they have to, and another keynote that is the timeline. Sometimes the timeline is not always follow the timeline as per the law. So be well prepared in case of the timeline may be prolonged due to the additional requirement of the authority or some complication in the licensing process. Yeah. There are some condition and some restriction for foreign investor when they are doing in Vietnam, and these are some restriction that I want to share with you and the strategy to overcome. Firstly, the business line, the restriction on the business line. There's no such condition or strict condition or requirement apply to the local company, but for the foreign investor, some business activity have associated with the condition and requirement. For example, if they want to do advertisement activities in Vietnam, they have to joint venture with a Vietnamese partner, which is an organization having their advertisement activity on their license. So based on those restriction and condition, they have to tailor or design an effective market entry strategy. The second one is the nominee structure. Sometimes the foreign investor, they want to start immediately for the operation of their business in Vietnam, and they choose the nominee structure. However, there are some risks associated to the nominee because the nominee structure will, foreign investor may have to focus on the control of the nominee because the nominee will base on their behalf to do business in Vietnam, and later the foreigner will buy out the nominee. But in the next phase when buy out, the foreign investor may have to pay twice to buy out. The third one regarding the local partners, some of the foreign investors, they don't want to be controlled by a third party in case they have the know-how, they have the patience, they have the trademark intellectual property, and they don't want to be controlled by the third party. So in that case, they may joint venture with the local partners. And the fourth one, that is the company chapter strategy and the shareholder agreement. In this strategy, foreign investor may consider to control of their management role in the company by tailoring the company chapter regarding the voting right, the dividend repatriation, the share transfer to show their control and supervision of their money in the company. Okay, after the company set up for investor and Vietnam, the newly established company has to strictly follow up with the post-licensing or post-establishment compliance, including the on the compliance and those kind of post setup. For example, having the bank account opening and fulfill capital in 90 days, because after nearly 10 years supporting a foreign investor doing business in Vietnam, I observed some case that they may stuck with the bank account opening and then delay in the fulfill of the capital. And the delay or expire the deadline 90 days will result a lot of consequences, time and cost to solve these problems. And also for some report, for example, annually, quarterly, or any statutory compliance report, the foreign investor must strictly adhere to this requirement, because any failure or failure of the deadline or ignore of those kind of reports may resulting to the penalties to the foreign investor. Here, I want to focus on some common mistakes that our client and foreign investor may face with when they navigate into the Vietnamese business environment. Yeah, the first one I share with you should be fulfill the capital in 90 days. And the second one, sometimes the investor, like the general director, the director, they lend their own money to the company to do the to cover the operation expenses. But with the lending cash personally, like a withdraw money from their personal bank account and lend into the company without any documentation, will resulting in the stock of the money and cannot be repaid back to the person. And also some company, they have foreign loan from the mother company without any proper loan documentation, or do not register with the State Bank of Vietnam in case that the loan is the medium or long-term loan, that will resulting a lot of consequences, a big penalties, and also resulting in the operation disruption. And the compliance, for sure, very important to also avoid the penalty and also the reputation of the company. To appoint a qualified chief accountant, some foreign investors, they may have misunderstanding of the person in charge of accounting role or the chief accountant, because the chief accountant is required to register after 12 months of operation, but they just put some name as the chief accountant without any knowing well the requirement condition of a chief accountant as per Vietnam tax accounting law. And the 6 and 7, we strongly recommend and advise our clients to strictly adhere to the legal framework in Vietnam to navigate well into the Vietnamese business market, and having support from a professional to give you advice and ensure the compliant and smooth operation. So thank you everyone for having me sharing here. Thank you.
Morning. Yeah, my name is Sze Ming. I'm from United Overseas Bank, Vietnam, and I head the Foreign Direct Investment Advisory. Okay, so today here, just want to give you a brief overview of Vietnam, macro, and also introduce a bit of the banking services that we provide. Okay, here. Right. Here's the overview of Vietnam. Probably I will draw your attention to the economy. Okay, 2024, GDP per capita, 4,700. So you may wonder what is this 4,700? So by World Bank definition, we're actually in middle income. In fact, in high middle income, because from 4,500 to 13,000 is World Bank definition of high middle income. Probably a bit of comparison between our neighbors, right? Singapore is 90,000 US, right? Malaysia 13,000, Thailand 7,000, Indonesia, 4,900. So if we look at this number, in fact, I think Vietnam is probably closer to Indonesia. Okay. Last year, our growth is 7%. And in fact, it's high growth. Right? And again, compared to our neighbors, Indonesia last year achieved 5%, I think Malaysia about 5%. So in fact, among these few ASEAN countries, I think Vietnam has achieved one of the highest, 7%. And this year, I think we target 8%. But obviously, with the current tariff situation, this number is going to be difficult to predict, right? But by and large, the bank has done a bit of survey on this. If we look at 46% tariff, we think that this will go down by to 6%. Right? But then again, there's on-site. And in fact, if you look at the 90-day pause that we have, in fact, there's a lot of activities going on now. So at the end, we get to see what's the projected growth for this year. Right? CPI 3.7%. S&P rating BB plus. What is this BB plus? This is a credit rating assigned by the S&P. Right? BB plus today we're actually below investment grade. Investment grade is BBB. In fact, we're actually only one grade lower. And again, the Indonesia today is also BB plus. So in fact, there's a lot of similarity between Vietnam, Indonesia, right, in terms of the economy, in terms of being the manufacturing hub, right? Okay, labor 53 million, right? I don't think we need to go through a lot of this, but this to show that out of 100 million, there's a very strong labor force, right? Literacy level, education, 38% tertiary education. Average wages in 2024 is for $300. Here we have 70 FTA, about these FTA, right? Key sectors, these are key sectors. Again, later I also show a chart about what are the key sectors that foreign investors are investing in. Okay, these are the economic zone, industrial park. I think this is how Jean has mentioned a little bit about what are the areas about these industrial parks. Right? In fact, they are in industrial park region. Okay, here. This is the free trade agreement. Okay? By no means it is comprehensive, but we just want to highlight some of the key. CP, these are ASEAN. So basically, Vietnam today is positioned as a free trade, so it's encouraging a lot of export. I think this is one of the very important part about Vietnam. How we can increase the export. In fact, we can also diversify the market. Having all this free trade, we don't really need to. Obviously, they are looking to diversify and the export market, right? And this is the key point where we have free trade agreement with all these countries. Right. Okay, FDI. If you look at last year, 38, this is registered FDI. Registered FDI. Right. Last year, 38 billion. Slightly below 2023, 39. But in fact, I don't have the earlier numbers, but in fact, this is back to pre-COVID level. 2019, we were about 36, 37. So we actually, in the last 2 years, it has jumped up. The top investor. Okay, number one, Singapore, South Korea, Mainland China. These are the three countries that invested. In fact, if you go down the list, we have Japan, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. In fact, the top six, these are top six. Top investor sector. Now we show you all this area that invest in. 67% are into processing and manufacturing. 17% real estate. Real estate will include residential, commercial, and industrial. So these are key. Why is such a big number? Because of course the real estate is to support the growth in manufacturing. But you have this real estate and industrial real estate built up where the manufacturing will be in. Okay, reasons to invest in Vietnam. I don't think I need to stress too much. We all know that, a lot of investment in Vietnam. But by and large, these are the four. We think that these are the four key, right? Stable government, young, hardworking population, and it's very important. That's young population, right? So we got the statistics. I think 70% of Vietnam population or the age they are below 40 years, so very young. So probably myself is, I think we bump up a bit of the age. Right, geographic location, right? Proximity, to the north, to the south, right? So that's why we see from the Acclime chart that a lot of imports from China, right? So that's the proximity. High growth, again, last year was 7%, right? And also the economic activities has been stable. And we look at the FDI coming in. All right, this chart is interesting because we look at Vietnam, right? What do you see here? Basically, north and south. This number is high. This is about 30%. Right? So in fact, we see today that a lot of investment in the north. In fact, 58% of all FDI today is into the north. The south here is about 30. Sorry, I think it's hidden. I think it's about 31%. Right, 34. Okay. So this number has been going up. So you notice that this number has been going up. Well, unfortunately, this number is going up. It's not that the investment is lower, just that a lot more investment than not. Okay, what are these investments? Of course, the electronics, the semiconductor. So a lot of them are having their base there, and all the queens are there, the Foxconn, the Petrotron. Okay, foreign exchange control. Just talk a little bit about Vietnam. Vietnam dong is a control currency, right? And it is basically official currency of Vietnam. And all transactions in Vietnam must be done in dong. Right? But having said that, we are still allowed by regulation to buy and transfer foreign currency overseas. But actually, for these three, I mean, this is not comprehensive, but these are the three major purposes that most of foreign investors want to transfer money. First, payment of goods and services, payment of offshore loans, and payment of dividend. Right? And we require supporting documents to make all these options. And just now, also, I mean, this is not, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the restriction. So I also noticed that Acclime has mentioned about this 90 days, chartered capital, as well as undocumented loan. So if you want to find a little bit more, please approach us. We can actually help you to give you a bit more advice on some of the restriction in Vietnam, so that you can navigate through the restriction. Okay. Right, very quickly, just to introduce a bit of UOB. Right. So we are based in Singapore. Yeah, very proud to say that we have double A rating. Okay. Okay. So we are very. I mean, our network is quite comprehensive in ASEAN. We have 500 offices, 19 countries, and if you look through this, these are the countries that we in Vietnam, Singapore, and the ASEAN countries, China, of course, mainland China. Well, we do have representation in the States, in Europe, but by and large, we are in Asia Pacific. Okay, one bank. Okay, what do we have? Right, corporate banking, personal banking, treasury solutions. So in fact, we bring you the whole range of financial products. Yeah, I need to go through this a bit faster because I think they're flashing here. Okay, Vietnam. Okay, we started in 1993. And today, UOB Vietnam, we have 5 branches. 3 in Ho Chi Minh City, 2 in Hanoi. Right? Range of banking products from what we have. This is wholesale banking, all this lending, cash management, trade products. So we have a full range of corporate banking services products, as well as personal banking. So if you look at this, we actually do even have a personal account. We offer unsecured lending, credit card, right? So in fact, for FDIs or for Vietnamese companies, right, we can bank you from personal to the company. Okay. Thank you very much. And if you have further questions, So we have 3 members in my team. I will include myself. Right? Please do drop us a line. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. First of all, hopefully these 4 presentations gave you a basic foundation of where Vietnam is positioned now. What are some of the latest updates on trade tariffs, and as well, what are some of the market entry strategies that you might consider for your business? Obviously, these are the foundations for you. We'll invite you to reach out to the panelists here to ask if you need further information. And as well, make sure that you put down your questions because now we're going to start the second session of our offline seminar, the panel discussion. So give us 1 minute. Hopefully that will be enough to arrange the seating here. And then we'll go through some of the questions that you may have and as well what we prepared for you. Thank you.
Okay, it's a great word. So now I'm gonna have the background.
To start, let me questions. So quite a few questions on the online side. We have as well prepared a few rounds of questions that will cover a bit of the tariffs and trade and some of the practical experience. But let's try to go through the first 2 or 3 questions from the audience here and a few questions from online. Anyone would like to ask anything now? With any of the panelists?
Okay, can I ask just one big question? I know that the FBI had IRC, some ERC license. Due to some reason, CSI, I call up to renew. But now we have problem to renew that. So that can we continue to do business without IRC? We had an ERC, it's okay, right? But IRC.
Okay, thank you for your question. It's a very interesting question that one of our clients faced the same issue.
Oh.
Right. Yes, they set up the company and they don't have any local team to manage the expiration of their license and also sub-license. So before answering the question, may I know that the investment project of the investor is also the company, right?
It's a company, the joint venture
Right.
in tourism,
Right.
travel.
Yeah.
So that it's that business request have to set up the
Joint venture, right? So the joint venture on the IRC is also the joint venture company.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so in that case, without, you are concerned that without the IRC, whether the company can still operation or not?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Yeah, the answer is yes, you still can continue with the business of the company. However, there are some limitations that govern the joint venture or apply to the foreign investor, because tourism, you know that they have some secure deposit in your bank account, and also the some condition apply to inbound or outbound tourists.
Yeah, the license for us.
Yeah.
And another license for us.
Yeah. So now you still have the operating license for outbound and inbound tourists, right?
Inbound, yes, right.
Yeah. So in that case, concurrently, you, because it's expired, so you have to obtain the new one. You cannot renew it.
Yeah.
And you have to obtain the new one under that joint venture company. Yeah, that's the solution.
All right, hopefully that answers, and Tao can give you more insights as well later on.
Let's discuss further when you have the free time.
We have a few questions from the online audience reflecting the tariff status and what's the experience of some of the current manufacturers, current traders that are in here. So maybe this question here for Jean, based on your experience with some of your tenants at VW, what are they thinking? What are they doing? What's your experience? If you have some information from them on some of the strategies that they may be adopting, or some of the potential silver lining actions that they're looking to do.
Okay, I think first thing first, as one of the, we're probably if I can say, probably the most scalable industrial landlord in Vietnam. Most of our, as you can imagine, most of our tenants are FDIs in their manufacturing. So what I can share this moment is most of them, they're not, there's no any pivoting at this moment because, well, as we all know, it's just too early to, to predict or to say anything, right? Because, well, it just happened. The situation in the past 2 weeks just escalated and developed really rapidly. But what I can say is at this moment, most people, they stay put and they are still very bullish on Vietnam. And our, there's a very common, mindset from, my Taiwanese peers, especially in, as I said, mainly in EMS or electronic manufacturing. So they're saying well, they're probably not in a position to make any move further because, well, most of them, they probably just relocate here in the past 2 years. And it doesn't make sense for them to, just running around to see for another paradise, to save 10% tariff and which are not confirmed, right? Because, well, who knows? It's a very extremely fluid situation. And I think, but the bottom line is, I think everybody, the key reason people are still bullish about Vietnam is not merely looking into, the tariff or the wages or the land cost. You need to look into, well, all of you, most of you, I guess, you're a very seasoned, investors or manufacturers from a more holistic view, right? Vietnam, you probably have, well, I won't say it's the cheapest in terms of the land, right? And more people coming in, they're not focusing on the comparatively reasonable labor cost, right? They're, we're seeing more in our portfolio, there are more capital intensive clients, right? But the thing is, Vietnam comparing to other markets, well, it's more mature and, from sourcing perspective, you basically finding everything you need. It's easier to source for most of, I'll say just like us, right? We're providing the universal standardized warehouses and factories to the clients. In Vietnam, it's the same. You probably don't have a really cutting edge semiconductor, crazy chip making business here, but like if you're in, like a fundamental basic assemblage or, shoe or textile manufacturing and basic R&Ds, you basically find everything you need. So from holistic point of view, not even mention the, efficiency and the productivity of the Vietnamese labor forces, right? So I think from this view, like people are staying put and still being very bullish to Vietnam. And I think one thing I can share with you is that like the ongoing discussions, like in terms of the newcomers or the leases, I think there's some, psychologically, there's some, well, there might be some hesitations or things are slowing down. But I think like for people who are already here or incoming ones, which means they're in advanced discussion, they're saying definitely, yeah. And well, one more thing, not about last but not least, I just came back from the trip in Northeast Asia visiting, our investors, the institutions. Most of the people like not almost none of them ask me, tariff related questions because all of us we know, at this moment, any response you see from no matter from client side, supply side, or demand side are just technical. There's no strategic change because it's just too early to pivot yet. Yeah, but I think the fundamentals never change. So I think we're still very bullish. Definitely, like not just from our side, like this is what we receive and we feel from our clients. Yeah, so I think that's my 2 cents.
And just to add on that, our experience as well. So this year we're actively working with around 4 or 5 manufacturers, setting up in Vietnam in the process of the actual execution of the actual setup. And only one of them 1 week ago sent us a message that they're thinking about pausing the project. And just 2 days ago, they sent us another message that they're going to have. So they're proceeding. So it's what we see in the market is that the initial reaction is to kind of stop and wait, think about it. But investors are not going to think about it for the next 2.5 years. They've already done that before actually proceeding with the execution. The plan is already set. They have a strategy. And again, that strategy is not just the fact that it's a cheap market. The strategy reflects the entire ecosystem of the Vietnamese opportunity and the regional opportunity as well. So we see investors that may kind of pause or think a bit more about what they're doing, but again, that doesn't stop them from actually pushing it out. And that's our real example with these 4 to 5 manufacturers and 3 companies that we look after in this first quarter of 2024. Any questions from the audience here? We have another question that somewhat reflects the manufacturing setup from the online audience. Differences and benefits for a FDI company versus an EPE, export process enterprise company located in export processing zone. I don't know if you have some insight on EPZs, export processing zones, and how these work, or maybe Tao can have a few notes here.
Yeah, you can share
go
first about the EPZ.
No, I mean PPE. I mean like we're not an operator, right? But definitely like we can. As I mentioned, we provide one-stop shop service and we have access to guide them through to the right authorities. But like from our side is like we can help them to, we're the hardware infrastructure providers, right? So of course, like if they want EPE, you need to install all the fences, CCTVs, all the custom controls and in addition to that, we definitely guide them through for the whole process for applying PE. But in terms of the actual documentation, so we work with like agencies or firms like Acclime, and I think the whole process. I think at this moment, I'm not quite sure about the number, but there's quite decent amount of EPE or bonded from our clients' demand. And in addition to that, one thing I forgot to mention is since in this wave of new tariff, I think there are more cross-border, online retailers being impacted, especially if they're in mainland China basis, right? So we totally see that might shift more demands to Vietnam in terms of these EPE industrial logistics spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, that I agree with you. And regarding the EPE concept that for investor has they based on the tariff and even post of 90 days, but there are some condition or restriction regarding the import and export tax as well, and the timeline for those kind of tax declaration may be prolonged than expected.
And we actually have an article on our website that gives more detail on the EPE, on the framework, and some of the benefits as well. That are also some of the challenges that you have because you're export focused. Everything that you produce needs to be exported 100%. So it's a very specific niche for investors that want to be part of that ecosystem, just export focused only. One question for Jose. Finance perspective, where do you see some specific needs that foreign investors that are entering Vietnam? What are some of their specific needs from a finance banking perspective that they have issues with, or it would be beneficial for them to access at that initial stage?
Right. I think just now I mentioned a bit of a restriction in Vietnam. Right? So you have to understand that Vietnam nationalized. Okay, so it's not tradable, free trade, but outside of Vietnam. So these are some of the considerations. You understand this and probably understand a bit about the fluctuation of the FX rate. Vietnam down, I think by and large, if you look at through the years, it does devalue against US dollar. Probably 1%, 2%, right? Of course, there are certain years very volatile, right? And probably now is another volatile situation. So understanding of the currency, the FX, right? Interest rate, right? So from bank side, of course, we can give you more advice, and also you also may want to consider, right, debt versus financing. Right? I mean, investing in your country, how much capital you want to put in, 100%, 30%, all right? And what are the options that you have, right? Getting a loan from a bank, onshore, or getting an offshore loan, right? So there are a lot of consideration, Of course, that aside that you already have that, evaluate the project really, and it's viable, right? So as you have to understand about a little bit more about the country, financials, interest rate, right? And financing options that you have, right? All this, and obviously, if anyone have questions, right, please feel free to engage us because this is not across the board for everybody, right? So different industry or different business may require different things. Take for example, manufacturing versus trading. Obviously, trading you don't need to pump in a lot of capital. It's a lot of buy and sell, right? Manufacturing you need to buy land or you need to rent you need to put in the equipment, right? So there are different considerations for different kind of business.
Right. And we just received an interesting question now on the location side and investment source. So the individual is basically asking that historically the south of Vietnam has been more popular for investors coming in from the west, from EU, US. North was more popular investments coming in from the Asia markets, Greater China, Taiwan, and so on and so forth. Is this a trend that you see in the market as it is now, or it's becoming more diverse?
You want to take it first, or me?
Yeah, okay. Just now, I think I did show a chart about north and south. Right? So in the north, in fact, in the last few years, it has ramped up, quite a fair bit of foreign investment. I think the numbers is 50 over %. Right? In south, actually has declined. But yes, traditionally, south has been the manufacturing hub, and it started very early, probably more than 20 years ago. Investment are into south, but in the recent probably 5-10 years, there's a lot of development in the north. Probably also, Samsung has gone into the north. Of course, with Samsung going in and big amount, I think I read something like $22 billion investment or more, right? So the supply chain, so you bring all the whole supply chain going up, right? As to the country, I guess, I mean, what we see is that yes, there's a bit of investment from Greater China into the north, right? But that doesn't mean that they don't have it in the south. So we don't really have an exact breakdown, but we do see that yes, there's a lot of investors going to the north.
Excellent. So I think like from a banking perspective, they're hosting all the money flows, right? That we're actually we're accommodating them. So from our perspective, traditionally, definitely totally agree with Sze Ming. So I think in the south, I'll say like I'll differentiate not just from, investors' background, because in the South, like in the early days, there are also many, Taiwanese or mainly Taiwanese, because, like 30 started probably like from 30 years ago. I think the early developments in Vietnam are from the South. And I think European traditionally, they have a tighter relationship bond, especially from Germany, I think, like with the Vietnamese government. So when they came here, I think the South, especially our hometown, right? Like BW's hometown, Binh was the the earliest industrialized provinces. So I think most of these businesses are gathered here. And then I think in the South, because in the early days, people are basically, leveraging the reasonable labor wages here, right? So I think these are early labor intensive or traditional, furniture textile industry in the South, right? But if we talk about the North, I'll say in the past 20-something years, global EMS, consumer electronics, supply chain, assembly, because they some of these like ship their production from China because of proximity, and also closer ground transportation, right? So we're talking about, you see, like Foxconn, Wistron, and Samsung for sure, Luxshare and Gore-Tex, and all these key makers. Even recently, we understand that the BYD is coming in as well, right? So I think all the way from Haiphong all the way to Bắc Ninh to Hanoi and even to Vĩnh Phúc. This is the high tech and the value added manufacturing corridor of Vietnam. But recently we've seen this trend has been even more expanded to the mid north. So we're talking about Ha Nam, Nghệ An, Nam Dinh. So BW as a developer, we are tightly monitoring this trend and also very aggressively yet precisely picking the site and try to build more inventories and pipelines to help our incoming investors and the clients in these locations. So the bottom line is it depends on which kind of industry you're in. And these are different clusters. Like in the north, probably electronics. In the south, again, more consumer goods or traditional.
Yeah, and that's our experience as well. So industry focus, you would see that manufacturing and generally high tech will be more located in the north, as well trading, logistics. They will definitely, even they set up in Ho Chi Minh City, they will have a solid office in the north as well. But pretty much everything else, when you're looking about services, you're looking at hospitality, you're looking about distribution and many others. Ho Chi Minh City is that business hub where investors would come in first, unless they need that northern exposure, maybe related to supply chain proximity, maybe related to government from a democracy perspective, that we see in that sense. Any questions here in the audience? Otherwise, I have an interesting one for all of the panelists here. One question from one of our online attendees: what are the top 3 things as a foreign investor they should look out for when setting up a business in Vietnam? So my suggestion is, since we're 4 here, we can cover 4 things, one each of us. I'll start probably just to kind of allow you a bit to think on your side, what would be the one thing that you would suggest on your view. From my side, one of the things that definitely stands out is making sure that when you're setting up a business in Vietnam, you're setting up the right structure that makes sense for your right activities and for your specific goals. So if you're looking at setting up a trading company, making sure you understand trading license, what kind of company, is it an LLC, is it foreign owned, do you want a joint venture? You don't want to set up a rep office when your goal is to have a trading company. Similarly, if you're not planning to create revenue and you have no basic understanding of the Vietnamese market, maybe it doesn't make sense to set up an enterprise at all. Maybe what you need is a rep office for 1 or 2 years. We identify, are there opportunities here, do your research. So again, setting up the right structure with the right business lines based on your specific goals and activities is essential for investors in Vietnam. And there's a lot of them, they get them wrong, and you wouldn't expect the level of governance that some of these international investors have. and they still don't necessarily get it right from the first. So that would be my choice.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Regarding the market entry strategy, I strongly recommend that for investor to thoroughly understand the legal framework in Vietnam, and they should seek professional support from professional or experienced corporate firm, because know well the legal framework. They will know all the condition and restriction applied to their business sectors. And based on that, they can modify or tailor or design an effective business model and market entry strategy, and know well having the comprehensive understanding of the legal framework will ensure their compliance and avoid any legal issues. And with the professional support from corporate and professional firm, they will help you navigate effectively in the dynamic business environment in Vietnam.
Okay, thanks. For me, from banking wise, I've already talked about money, right? So I think just I mentioned a bit about Vietnam dong. I think that is the thing that you may need to understand if you're not in Vietnam, right? So Vietnamese dong, control currency, right? Understand what is the fluctuation of this currency, right? As I say, you will notice that general trend devalue against the US dollar, right? But by how much, right? And the other thing is about Vietnam. You can only trade Vietnam dong in Vietnam. Right? And if you want me to purchase foreign currency, right, you need to provide supporting documents. So having said that, the understanding of the currency, of course, hedging, you may want to consider to hedge against, the volatility of Vietnamese dong, right? So all this from a bank perspective, we can advise you further, right?
Okay, like here, I think, well, a very, very fundamental and basic suggestion is to, you have to understand that Vietnam is not the Wild West. It's getting even more sophisticated. And well, that is, from a more comprehensive point of view, not just banking, the compliances, and from our perspective, firefighting, if you're on the site, firefighting, construction code, even all these extensions, or if you want to, install or something, don't take chances. Okay? Don't take chances. Follow the rule, play by the book, hire a consultant, or use us. We will guide you through. No, I'm not kidding. No, I mean, the thing is, like Vietnam, some people still view here as very speculative or no, this is not a case. This is not a case at all, right? Things been improving. Authorities are more, efficient and very efficient on enforcement. So you better understand. And all these are, and in this, back to my previous point, if you're entering into different market, different clusters, these local government, they have their own interpretation in terms of the law and implementation, right? So you need to penetrate it through, not just by yourself, but your, partners, your consultants. So you need a really good, like a local muscles and local forces to help you. And I think all of us here today is in the best position to help you guys navigate through all this. Yeah. So, but anyhow, I think at the end of the day, just follow it. Yeah, here you don't want to take the chances, and that will spend you, ridiculously amount of cost, like way beyond our imagination.
Yeah, and just to add on that, fixing up things for those situations where investors didn't follow the rule ends up 10 times more costly than doing it right from the start. So definitely to kind of close off with the advice. If you're looking to set up in Vietnam, make sure you understand what you're trying to do. Make sure you're doing it right. And by all means, talk to multiple consultants, figure out multiple options, ideas, do your research. Don't just trust one individual that can tell you that we're going to sort it out fast and easy for you. That's never going to happen. It may be fast, but not easy, or the other way around. So it's definitely a complex market, but again, it is based on rules, based on very clear standards and regulations. It's not the Wild Wild West anymore 30 years ago. So that's definitely something that I subscribe. We have one more question or a set of questions online that cover the legal representative, nationality, what's the process. The quick answer is that the legal representative doesn't need to be a Vietnamese individual, it can be any nationality, as Tao shared before, but you need at least one that resides in Vietnam. You can have two, you can have three. And again, that's something that us can advise later on. So for those ones that want to understand a bit more about the process and how it works for structuring your entity in Vietnam, reach out to Tao or myself, and we can have a discussion later on about all the specifics, and no issue on that. Any questions from the audience here? Everyone was quiet here. A lot of people were very vocal online. There's quite a few questions on the ministry expansion in Vietnam and the changes at the ministerial level, which are the most expansive ones, kind of Vietnam's history of governance. Have any thoughts on, are those beneficial? Are those beneficial for the investors? Will those streamline and simplify the governance and the regulatory matters?
Okay. As I support with the market entry and also licensing for the foreign investor doing their business in Vietnam, and do a lot with the competent authority when support them with the license. And I observe that even there is structure in the ministerial, for example, the department, the provincial or the ministerial level, but Vietnam government, they have a well support with a lot of policies to support and attract the foreign investor. For example, they enforce or they improve the digital transformation a lot. That a lot of process can do online, and also shorten the timeline for quite a numerous of the licensing process. And Vietnamese government, they are very proactive in entering in a lot of free trade agreements that have a lot of incentive for foreign investor when they want to navigate into the Vietnamese market.
Thank you, Lucy. We have one more question, which is quite interesting for UOB and BW panelists. Given the tariff imposed to China is higher than Vietnam, do you see any influx of Chinese investments coming into Vietnam, specifically in the north, at this stage under these current considerations? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but and is it encouraged or is there any limitation from the Vietnamese authorities to accept and bring in and enable this flow of investments that potentially can come in out of China?
Okay, okay. Let's use a more neutral, point of view to look into that, right? So we don't say accelerate or something, but the trend is there, already there, and it's been there for a while, right? So I think the relocation and diversification of supply chain and production capacity, there's no way return, right? So I think as I mentioned earlier, any responses or any shift, any changes at this moment are just purely technical. So there's no strategic change at all. It's just too early, right? So the existing strategy is to diverse their production bases, and I think Vietnam is probably best positioned for that, for global manufacturing. Yeah. So I think this is a very short answer of that.
Right. Okay. So what we observe is that okay. So the initial reaction to when announced that 46% tariff, right? So there's a lot of people, okay, let's wait and see, right? Then of course, then a few days later, then you have like a pause and say, okay, now the baseline is 10%. Then it's like, okay, so much uncertainty, right? So that will probably cause some investor to hold back and wait and see. But by and large, the disruption of supply chain happened. I mean, it happens like years back, right? So it's like you will move, right? So that you'll see that a lot of manufacturing de-risking, moving up from China. So where do they go? So Asia, or America, South. So the shift of supply chain has started really, right? So this is not turning back, right? Right. So it's a matter of which country to go. And of course, in recent years, Vietnam has been one of them. But it doesn't mean that everything moved to Vietnam. So you can't, you can't. In fact, I think there was something that statistics show that I think 1% shift, right, from China means a 10% increase in Vietnam. Things like that. So yeah, I mean, we still do see that there still be a shift, right? But again, the beneficiary will be many countries. It's a China plus many.
Thank you. Final question for the panelists, and then we can wrap up. Given the current situation of the tariffs, of the trade, of the complexities, and all the changes and uncertainties that exist, what would be your confidence level in the Vietnamese opportunity? Again, not just from a supply chain manufacturing perspective, but overall from a economic jurisdiction and investment opportunity. What would be your confidence level based on what's happening right now? Tomorrow, see what's happening.
I would say still bullish, very high. I mean, we're the largest landlord. We're not going anywhere. We cannot go anywhere. I'm just kidding. Right. So, I mean, like we're in a very traditional, no rocket science business, right? So we're, very, precisely and accurately to execute our acquisition and expansion. So yes, we're expanding. We're still expanding. Right? But we will look into the province and locations with more incoming demand, and we're closely monitoring on the trend, and also along with our clients and our global leasing network and sales networks to fathom, like any industry changes, because they probably need to be in different localities. So we'll look into that and have more new developments, because there are many provinces mostly in the middle of Vietnam, which we don't have presence yet. So, who knows? Like, if there is a demand and we see that's promising, and then probably we'll just go there. But at this moment, we are very, very paying extra caution and to align with our clients to weather the whole changing situation at this point. Yeah, but the answer is definitely yes. We're very bullish.
Right. So from a UOB perspective, right? So we are committed to this country. In fact, last week I think we announced we're going to increase our payout capital for Vietnam by 2,000 trillion. That's about $77 million US. And in addition, we actually we have actually secured a site, to build our UOB Plaza. Right? So we have a big commitment in Vietnam, right? Because I think we are here for a long run. We are not looking at the 10 days. 90-day pause, sorry, I can't remember how many days pause it just happened, right? But by and large, I think Vietnam, I mean, if you look at, all the reasons that I put up, like, as well as that you bought a free trade agreement. So I think it is in a good position, right, to capture all these investments.
Yeah, right. Recently, in the recent last month and this month, we have a very big client from China mainland. They navigate into Vietnam with a huge retail chain store, and even the tariff or the post 90 days that will not impact their market entry strategy, and they still see Vietnamese market is very attractive because the middle class or the growth of the economic and the population, which is make the market very, very attractive to the regarding the consumption or retail or wholesale trading business in Vietnam. And Vietnam government, they very proactive to deal with the other jurisdiction countries to make a good, the strategy for investor to invest into Vietnam, and even some law of the legal landscape is fragment or not always stable, but the foreign investor, they know well about that, and they stay informed about the change of regulatory requirement, and they well prepare for that, and they still see Vietnam is very attractive market.
Thank you. And to close off, I'll reiterate and add on that the Vietnamese growth opportunity and the economic development that Vietnam had is directly linked with FDI growth. That's essentially a fact. Everyone knows it, starting with manufacturing, but going through many other sectors as well. Therefore, if Vietnam seeks to continue for the next 10 years to grow, FDI will be a significant part of that. So that's what we're confident about, which means that there's going to be opportunities coming in for foreign investors in Vietnam due to the authorities' alignment with foreign investors in country and the reliance on that for support. With that being said, I'd like to thank you again for all the attendees online and offline for our morning business briefing. And again, thank you to the panelists. We have Jean from BW Industrial, Jose from UOB Vietnam, and Thao from Acclime Vietnam. So thank you. And this concludes our discussion and panel. For any other questions, please reach out to us. We'll have a small networking session and a few canapés later on. So thank you again, everyone online. Thank you for attending, and please keep in touch. Thank you. We have a round of small gifts and pleasure for the panelists. Thank you, team, for organizing.
So you do have a small. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. It's for us.
Yeah.